question. Big break into the industry as a writer. Talk about your big break.
So big break as a writer, big break period. My big break was between my sophomore and junior years of college. My mother says to me, you can't be a camp counselor anymore. You got to start figuring out what you want to do with your life. Through a connection, I get the best TV internship that I could get, which was an internship at The View, which was the Barbara Walters chat show on ABC, which is still on today, though Barbara Walters is no longer on it. That show, perhaps not surprisingly in retrospect, was the show that everyone's niece, nephew, doctor's son or daughter had an internship at. So there were like 35 interns, and not a lot for anybody to do. I was really fortunate. A wonderful writer by the name of Andrew Smith, who was a comedy writer on the show, writing jokes, took a liking to me and said to me, what are you doing here? Like, this is, like, what do you like? And I was like, well, you like sports? And I was like, yeah, I like sports. Again, hadn't really thought of the fact that, like, it was like, no, work was supposed to be something that was not fun. And it's like, I can't work in sports. That's too fun. Like, no, it's sports. He goes, come to the cafeteria, on the ABC cafeteria on Tuesday at 2:15. I'm having lunch with a guy at 1 o'clock. Come up to the table and act like you just kind of, are just stumbling on. And I'm going to introduce you to this guy. We're going to get you an internship in sports. And that guy's name, who I met, was a guy named Brian Brown, who is a terrific television sports writer, who I introduced myself to. And 2 weeks later, had moved my internship to an internship at Monday Night Football, which was in kind of pre-production at the time. It was a pregame show for Monday Night Football at ABC Sports. And that was a big break for me because Brian was, he's, again, a great writer, a great producer, and who became a great friend, but was just so much the kind of guy who would just do anything for, to help somebody out, and so he got me a job the next summer at the X Games. He helped get me a job the year after I graduated at the Sydney Olympics, and then at HBO Sports subsequent to that. And I really owe everything to him. And the neat thing is that he was a writer. He would write, the opening to the Olympics, like I've done for NBC, and he would write all kinds of other stuff. And so I saw that as something neat, in terms of how you can tell stories in sports and the art of it and the craft of it. And that caught me going. And I've sort of, in some ways, followed in his footsteps, and I've done other things. But, that was definitely, I think my biggest break, even looking back, going all the way to, becoming a writer.
What a great story.
Man.
Yeah.
Brian,
and I'm sure, like, you guys are the same, like, as you go forward, and, like, whenever a young person asks me if they want to get into the business, can I talk to you? I always say yes, and it's just, you just do what you can. Just give someone a foot in the door. And then if they knock it down, great, but it's just, that's just the way the business goes. So anyway.
Absolutely. And Brian Brown, one of the great tease writers of our time, just a fantastic writer all around. I mean, all the Olympic stuff that he's written has been outstanding. Yeah.
Total legend. And again, a great friend.
It's some great experiences. I worked at HBO Sports also as an intern. That was my big break, getting in as an intern there. And then going through that whole process and all the people there and writing and being involved, that seems like that was a good break for you as well after the first big break.
100%. And for years and years, HBO Sports was this, real kind of beacon of storytelling in sports, thanks to Ross Greenberg, who, there are a lot of people who have done a lot of great work, but a word that you got to be careful about throwing around, but you can say this about Ross, is a visionary. The guy had a vision that here's how we can tell stories in sports. And it evolved out of what he saw at NFL films and what Steve Sable did and what even Bud Greenspan did with his Olympic films. But HBO, and again, I imagine for, young people listening out there or young people in our business, HBO in, the 90s and the 2000s, was, before 30 for 30, HBO was where sports documentaries lived. And they you can find a lot of them you can find some on HBO Max, you can find them on YouTube, but, terrific storytelling house and just amazing people who came out of there. Even today, names that we could go through in terms of the best in the business, you'd be surprised who came out of HBO Sports. And that includes AJ, obviously. So
Hey, it's funny you mentioned Ross. Quick story. I didn't know him. I just called, and I called the secretary like, "Hey, I want to speak to Ross Green." I had read his name in a magazine and thought that I was going to get through. She was like, "No." She put me through the Kindle read. Long story short, I ended up getting on as an intern, and it changed my whole career path. And from that moment on, like I look at HBO Sports as like the mecca for me of that experience of getting into television and being a producer.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, we all got a story, and
Right.
and sometimes you got to do something unconventional like that to do it, right? To get in.